does, or what impact are smartphones having on our children?
That is a question that has received a lot of media attention, and there isn't exactly a clear-cut answer. I go through the evidence in the book, but what I want to say to fellow parents is that the evidence isn't overwhelming for harm. Definitely not. Some studies, for example, will compare children who have had a smartphone at a young age and children who had a smartphone at a slightly older age, and they'll find differences between them. But what we need to be careful of is that there are many, many family differences of why a child would have a smartphone at a young age. And think about all these things. They might be living in, an area where there's danger around. They may need to be able to have a smartphone to access help. They might be shouldering premature adult-like responsibilities. Their parents may not be able to afford all those after-school clubs that are so freaking expensive, even for me. And screen time might be substituting. Their parents may be struggling with whole host of other issues, and screen time is just plugging in those gaps. So whilst the digital world is important in mental health, what I see from studies is that the physical world that somebody is in is much, much more important. And if you have a loving family and you are a parent who wants to do the best for their children, I don't want people to worry so much that if they allow their kids some screen time, either on a tablet or TV for those who have young children, or have given them a smartphone, that is, the end. And to a certain degree, a lot of studies show that our expectations become reality in terms of, what we think and what we perceive. So, for example, if you're so worried that, oh, I've checked my smartphone too much, I'm not going to be able to fall asleep, or I'm going to be depressed, or I'm going to be anxious, to a certain degree, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's just important to sort of temper down and have quite a balanced conversation about these things.
And it's nice to hear, because alongside your book, I've also read Jonathan Haidt's Anxious Generation book, and that scared me a little bit. I think the tone of voice in your book to that book, because that book is very much like social media is the end of our generation, like where the parents giving it to them. But yours is kind of like, it's nice to hear that, because we can't get away from the digital world. We can't get away from social media. And it's a question I'm sure that you've had with your partner, like, when do we introduce social media to our children as well? So I think what your book is really good at, it brings a sense of calmness into the digital world and how we develop better digital habits.
Totally. And it's almost, again, that big question of what's the bigger issue to explore? Is it the tech, or is it our reaction to it? And it comes down to so much self-management, as you say, in the physical world, and everything has context. And I just feel better. The fact that, we kind of normalize that it's okay for screen time, because it's very much in our minds as a family at the moment. I have a 7-year-old daughter and an almost 5-year-old son. And like yesterday was Sunday, we were trying to get that right combination between spending time outdoors and playing, and then those little segments in between with screen time as well. And I would say it's the number one conversation that my wife and I are having at the moment is, how do we get the right balance? How do we kind of use it for our benefit and their benefit, and without kind of disturbing from any of again, we're imprinting our own bias upon it as parents according to our own experiences, but how do we give them the best means to kind of grow up in a natural way, considering tech is going to be a huge part of their lives going forward, and our children will experience tech in ways that we can't even fathom at the moment as well. So not to completely deprive them of managing it as they grow.
Yeah, I completely I completely agree with that. I think when you think about children and screen time, there are two important issues to sort of consider. Content, what they're accessing, and sort of parental controls and things like that. And the other thing is habits. And there's a lot of push in the media for avoidance of smartphones whilst they're young, but a lot of this content can be accessed in a whole variety of devices. And it is our responsibility as parents to make sure that it's age-appropriate content. And that's not necessarily a completely new problem, because when I grew up, laptops were available, but also I was an advanced reader, and sometimes I read books that were sort of not really suitable. And one was quite scary, for example, gave me nightmares. So it's not necessarily that it's just technological content. But the other thing is habits. And how do we give our kids a pattern of behavior to be encoded into their autopilot brain, that they'll be able to use technology to serve them for their purpose, but in addition be able to maintain focus, sleep well, and safeguard their mental health. And there is a lot of conversation of kick the can down the road, don't give a smartphone till X age. There's no evidence to suggest that that's good or bad, to be honest with you. But from my experience, I mean, all of us millennials, for example, wouldn't have had a phone. The smartphones came out when I was 19. I probably didn't get one that year. But there's a lot of millennials that didn't get phones till after the age of 18, into their 20s, that have developed a lot of problematic habits. So it doesn't necessarily safeguard to just say, oh, I'm just going to leave them till that age. We have to teach them that pattern of behavior that's useful, just like we would teach them to brush their teeth.